Good afternoon, everybody. This is Don again. It is time for episode 35 of Practical Reality. I'm in a great mood today, really good mood, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in this video. It actually has been 3 weeks since I made my last video, which is really bad. It should not have gone that long, but I was on vacation, and that's also part of what I'm going to be talking about in this video. The title or the subject of this video is going to be Living Your CPR, and CPR stands for Context, Purpose, and Results. And it's something that we talk about on my men's team. My men's team is called Men in the Arena, which was voted on by the men back when we started the group. When they see that, they're going to get mad at me because it is not a group, it's a team. A group can be individuals, a team works together. So here we are. I'm at episode 35, and I now have 16 subscribers. Wow. And some of them are not even people that I know. So that means I'm reaching somebody, which is unbelievable. And that makes me feel so good. And I don't really care how many subscribers I have. Obviously, I care. But I mean, at this point in time, I'm not making any money out of this. So it's just a passion project, something I'm not going to stop doing because I really love doing this. It's very important to me. And I just love the fact that I'm reaching some people with my message. I don't get many comments. I don't get many likes, this kind of thing. But I do get some views from my subscribers. And I'm just hoping that my subscribers out there, who are out there, pass along my videos and my message to others, because I feel that what I'm doing is important work. Even if it's not reaching many people right now, I feel deep in my soul here that it will be reaching people eventually in the not too distant future. And I'm going to keep on doing it as long as I possibly can, because that's how important it is to me. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Today is episode 35 of Practical Reality. It is a 10-day today. No humidity. A nice, gentle little breeze blowing. It's like probably 84 degrees, something like that. It's around, 4:30 in the afternoon. It is beautiful out. That's the kind of day that makes you feel awesome. And I actually played tennis a little earlier today. Great workout. I got home. I ate lunch and fell asleep because I worked myself a little bit too hard today. But that's okay. So I'm here a little bit later than I wanted to be, but that's fine. So, today's video, as you know, the past two videos have been basically called Living My Personal Evolution, or Planning Your Personal Evolution. And remember, the original context, or the original idea for this was that if you are on a spiritual journey, it's very nice to say that you're on a journey, but what is your destination? And planning that destination is your personal evolution, which is something that you can be in control of. And there are not many things in this world that you can control. And that is something that you have to accept as an evolving human being. You cannot control that many things, but you can control how you feel. You can control how you evolve. And that is what I think I want to concentrate on. So let's talk about how I failed in my mission to evolve in the past couple of weeks. My wife, whom I love dearly, has a nephew who started school at the University of Florida in Gainesville. And as a wonderful, loving aunt, she felt like she had to go there for a few days to help this kid get settled in. He flew in from Shanghai like a couple nights before we got there, landed in Dallas, and then flew into Gainesville the next day, which was Tuesday, I believe. And we took the train on Monday, Amtrak, because we don't have real IDs yet at this point in time, which, if I'm going to be traveling more, I'm going to have to get a real ID so let's get into that. The whole trip was me supposed to be my CPR, context, purpose, and results, was to be the wonderful, adoring, loving companion to my wife while she helped this kid get set up at his place in a condo. He's living off campus. He's a graduate student. He's living off campus in a condo with 2 other Chinese guys and 1 Indonesian girl whom I did not get to meet. So we booked the train when we figured out that, it was either take the train or drive, which would have been 20 hours driving, which would have been a real hassle. But taking the train wasn't necessarily the greatest option, but it seemed like a great idea at the time. This is when we woke up. I remember we were talking about it like a few days before we were leaving. Are we going to drive or are we going to take the train? And no, I'm sorry, that's not the way it happened. Are we going to drive? We can't fly, so are we going to drive? Or is my wife going to go by herself? Okay? And we woke up the next morning, and my wife said, well, why don't we take the train? And I said, okay, that's not a bad idea. Let's take the train. And I had no idea, about what taking the train would entail. So I looked it up, Amtrak. I did some research, eventually made some reservations, called them probably like 4 times with different questions to find out how the experience was going to be, and had some decent idea of what it was going to be like on this trip, which was going to take about 18 hours. The train left at 3 o'clock, a little after 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday. And we, this was, would have been, 12 days ago. And we got on the train, and it was wonderful. A great ride, nice and smooth and, scenic. And you watch the landscape go by, and you see many different things that are nice and some that are not so nice. Of course, railroads always go through the industrial part of a town and this kind of thing. So you don't necessarily get to see the most beautiful parts of any landscape that you go through. But what you do get to see is actually quite revealing about America. People live their lives. Ordinary people live their lives and live near railroad tracks. And they probably have these things going by all the time. And you wonder how it impacts them. These are the kind of thoughts that were going through my mind as we took the train down. And then nighttime fell. And it became apparent to me relatively quickly that I was not going to be able to sleep on this train. Now, I normally take some melatonin at night to try to help me fall asleep. Because with my prostate trouble, I get up to go to the bathroom like 3 or 4 times a night. So I actually decided not to take it that night. Because I said, well, if I don't sleep after taking the melatonin, I'm probably going to be even more groggy when I wake up the next morning. And I guess you could probably call that a mistake, because I didn't get hardly any sleep. I slept maybe for 2 hours, between maybe 5 and 7, approximately. 5 a.m. and 7 a.m., that's it. But the train car was quiet that entire night, basically that night. And it was not that big a deal, but I managed, this is the important point of this, I managed to be calm and not get all in a bad mood about it, saying, shit, why can't I sleep, this kind of thing. I just let it be. I accepted the situation, and I was proud of myself. And this is one of the few moments I get to be proud of myself on this trip, because here I am, the next day when we got there, like I said, it's 7 a.m., and it's 9 o'clock, 9:30 or so in the afternoon when we get to Jacksonville, Florida. And we had to rent a car and blah, 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 and get to the hotel, and all that stuff went fine. All that stuff went fine. But I was exhausted. But I was still proud of myself for living what we would call the CPR, the context, the purpose, and the results. What happened? How did you approach the situation? Okay? I approached it simply saying, okay, I'm accepting the fact that I'm not going to get any sleep. I'm going to still do my best, my very best, to be calm and cool and just hang out. You're on a train. Where can you go? Nowhere. You can walk up and down the aisle if you want to and disturb everybody else, but there's not really much place to go. And going to the bathroom on the train, whoa, that's an adventure in itself too, because the bathrooms were disgusting. They smelled of urine to high heaven. And this is also another thing you learn on the train. People don't really give a damn about each other on the train. They are there for their trip, and they're enduring it as just as the same way you are. How are they approaching it? That's not important. How are you approaching it is what's important. But the bathroom smelled really bad. So I tried to limit myself having to go to the bathroom as few times as possible. But obviously, at my age and with my condition, I had to go. So anyway, we get to Gainesville, Florida, where the University of Florida is located. And it's not, the room is great. I loved it. And we had to go out and meet this kid. And from that point, I changed in my mind without even knowing it. I changed in my mind my context for being there. I was no longer the quiet hero who was there to just facilitate my wife's activities and help this kid as much as she possibly can. I sort of became like, this should be a little bit more about me. I want this to be like more of a vacation, and it's really not intended to be a vacation. And that's when things started to go a little sideways. Now, I'm not saying that my wife and I argued a lot, but I started to get annoyed because, and admittedly, the fact that I had not gotten much sleep was definitely a factor in this. But at the same time, I could have been more conscious. I could have set a daily CPR for how am I going to act today in each situation as it arises. And that is really why I'm making this video today, to talk about how I failed to do that in each situation that arose. Now, I did perform well in some aspects of this. Gainesville, Florida was 95 degrees and humid as hell every day, the 3 days we were there. And I'm going to say this, Florida humidity is definitely worse than New Jersey humidity. You feel it hits you like a ton of bricks the second you walk out into that sunlight. And the Tuesday was not bad because all we really did was meet the kid and take him to Walmart, and my wife charged like $300 worth of stuff on her credit card to help this kid, set him up with supplies and cleaning supplies and food and pillows and blah, 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 whatever. And she was in a great mood and everything else. And then we took him out to eat. And, she didn't even want to leave him then. It was 8 o'clock at night. The restaurant was closed. We went back, and she was still talking to the kid about something. Of course, they're talking in Chinese to each other, so I have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm sort of sitting up with my legs on the table like, oh, man, let's go home. I'm tired, this kind of thing. And that turned out to be like sort of my MO for the next couple of days. Now, Wednesday, I remember clearly what we did was he wanted to go to the campus, which is, hey, that's normal. He wanted to go to the campus and walk around, and it was ice. Like I said, it was unbearably hot. And I wore as little clothing as I possibly can. A light shirt with shorts and a pair of sneakers, and that was it pretty much. And we walked him around, and he wanted to go to the campus, and then he wanted to go to get a, what do you call that? A bank account established, this kind of stuff. We got him to the campus. He got that done. And then it was so hot. And then we took him to lunch, and then we took him to dinner, and we brought him back to his campus and brought him back to his condo where he's living. And I was just getting annoyed the whole time. And the reason is because my wife was doting on this kid. And it's not like I wanted the attention for myself, although in a way that is part of it. But at the same time, it just felt like she's doting on the kid. He's 22 years old. He's a grown man. Do you really need to do all this stuff for him? And even he was saying, he's talking to her in Chinese, and they're having this conversation. He's waving her off like this, like, no, I don't need that, blah, 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 blah. But she kept insisting, and he finally just gave in because he was like, okay, she's not going to let me stop until I let her do exactly what she wants, which is exactly how I should have handled it. But I started to get annoyed, and I was tired, and it was like, bored, and I felt like, again, this isn't really much of a vacation. And that was wrong of me. It really was. And it took until I came back, and we came back on Saturday, okay? And my wife and I actually got back on Saturday afternoon, right? Like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And she went right to work, okay? I went home and slept. I slept for a couple of good hours. But when she got home that night, she was still handling some business with the kid and with her family and this kind of thing. And I got mad because I wanted some more of her attention, and it had been days since we really had any good quality time to each other. And we had a fight. And it was a bad fight, and we screamed at each other, this kind of thing. It was so unnecessary. And it took until like a couple of days. We made up the next morning, on Sunday morning, yes. Okay. I actually realized the error of my ways, and I apologized. And it took until the Wednesday night meeting with my team for me to be there with the men and open up as to exactly how I felt and exactly what had happened on this trip. And they just started laughing. And I was like, what are you guys laughing about? And I was like, and they were saying, Don, you told us before you left that your mission on this trip was to be the supporting hero. And as David Dida says in The Way of the Superior Man, you are the rock in the river, and you just let the current flow around you while you remain there undisturbed. And that's exactly how I did not act. And it's so ridiculous of me. I was completely wrong. And I spent like a half an hour talking about how I felt about it. And as I said, a couple of the guys were laughing the entire time. And they basically, when I finished, they said, Don, what's wrong with you? You are the one who's always talking about, being in the moment and being present and in control. And I completely lost that perspective. So it's clear that I have work to do. And it's clear should be clear to everybody that they have work to do. And I'm not trying to say I'm holier than thou. I'm not trying to say, actually, I'm saying the opposite. Here I am admitting flat out that I screwed up. And I made my wife uncomfortable and made my wife feel alienated from me simply because I was being selfish. And I was coming back on the trip on the way back on Friday night into Saturday, okay? I did manage to probably get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, but it still wasn't very restful sleep. I did take the melatonin, and I did get some sleep, but it was only probably 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and it really wasn't that much, and I still was exhausted. And I'm a person who lives by sleep. If there's any part of the routine that I'm a slave to, it's that I have to get my 7 or 8 hours a night. There's no doubt about that. And I hadn't gotten that. And it was like, ugh. And I was just on a short fuse. It just was. And it was a blow up. My wife was continuing to talk on the phone after she got home from work. And I was like, come on, and she kept looking at me like, waving me off like she does. And I blew it. And I blew my cork. And it was not one of those things that should have happened. It should not have happened. And I freely admit that this is a problem of mine. And there is a nugget inside of me. And this is also important to realize, I think, for anyone who is trying to take a personal journey. There is a nugget inside of me of anger that has existed in me ever since I was a kid. And you know how they say that like all the basic behavior patterns you have and this kind of thing are all established by the time you're like 6 or 7 years old? That's very, very true, more than likely. And I was, as I think might have said in other videos, what my father called discipline would probably be regarded as child abuse today. Okay? He didn't hesitate to take that belt off his waist and whip the crap out of me when he felt like it. And it was painful, and it was terrifying, and I would be living in sort of fear of him. Even when I got to be a teenager, he did not hesitate to enforce his brand of discipline on me in the way that he felt was appropriate. So I don't know, at my age, and certainly even long before this, I have accepted the fact that my father was who he was, and I cannot change that, and I cannot place responsibility for my present temper or state of mind on him. And I feel like I've made a lot of progress, but it's clear after what happened that I have not fully defeated that little nugget of anger that lives inside of me and has always existed and may always exist and may have to be dealt with on a more conscious and evolutionary level to prevent from showing itself in the ugly way that it did. And that is something that I have to deal with. And that is what living your CPR means. Context, purpose, and results. How are you going to approach each situation? Now, what do most, me included, most people do when they wake up in the morning? They get right into their routine. They go to the bathroom. They make breakfast maybe. They get in the shower. They start work. They drive, whatever. Do they think about any of it? That's a real question. Most people don't. I don't think most people do. And I don't. But this is something now that I have begun to start doing. Wake up in the morning, and while I'm standing in the kitchen making breakfast, think about how I'm going to be. Who am I today? Am I the person who is unconscious and does things without realizing the reason why I'm doing them? Or am I somebody who's going to be conscious and say, yes, this is what I'm living today. This is what I hope to accomplish today. This is the person, the best version of me that I'm going to be today. And that is huge. And that can prevent the kind of blow-ups, eruptions, which are, understand, the blow-up that I had is not completely or caused by the situation that I was in at that time. That blow-up is caused by the pain that I've been living with inside of me for my entire life. And that is something I can control. I started this video out talking about how there's many things you can't control. This is one of the things you can control. And this is one of the things I pledge to control from now on. So this video is a continuation of my personal evolution, and it's also a confession. I am imperfect. People, I am imperfect, and I have work to do. And there is a commitment that I am making to you, my audience, to myself, to my wife, to everyone I care about, that this is what I am going to try to do. I thought I had made more progress, but those circumstances, that change of routine, that change of sleep habit became an obstacle to me living in the present moment the way I want to. So that prevented me, and that showed me that there's still a lot of work for me to do. And that is what I intend to do for everyone in my life that I care about. And to the men in the arena who may view this video, I thank you all for opening my eyes to my own stupidity. That's exactly what it was. And I let myself become unconscious and needy and selfish, and that was wrong. And I am that rock, and I'm looking at the river right now, the Raritan River, which moves kind of slow. There's really not much current there. So the rock would probably stay fit really well. But you understand, the river sometimes can be a roaring rapid. And it really even wasn't the whole trip. It wasn't. There were circumstances I could have easily dealt with in the right way, but I chose the wrong way. And I apologize to the world, to everybody that may have seen my negativity. Thank you all for forgiving me. I forgive myself, and that's important. You cannot keep on kicking yourself for doing this. Yes, you made a mistake. Move on. Move on to the next thing, the next situation, the next CPR. Live it and become a better person, and then you don't have anything further to regret. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you will all like, comment, and subscribe. Any more comments, any thoughts you have, I would love to hear. Have a great day. Peace, prosperity, happiness to you all.